At one point, it was before this, but at one point, I just turned to JJ and I'm just like, F you, dude.
Yeah.
Like,
Very true.
you, your mom, your dad, your whole family, you, your dog, not your dogs.
Yeah.
Your dogs are cool.
I was just saying, my dogs love you. Welcome to the What's Our Verdict podcast. We fashion ourselves cinematic judge and jury. My name is JJ Crowder. I'm here with my co-host, Javier Ortiz.
What is up, my nerds?
And Ian Anderson.
Some shit.
We appreciate your help going on the podcast. Go ahead and hit that follow or subscribe button. Tell a friend about us. Check out our website, whatsourverdict.com, where you can listen to all of our episodes, as well as pick up some sweet, sweet merch. Sign up for our newsletter to get exclusive content updates and interact with us. Please go check out Podchaser, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, any of those three. Leave us a review. We'd love a 5-star from you. Really helps the podcast grow, so we'd really appreciate that. Moving forward, the question we always ask, if you ever find yourself wondering if you spend the time, money, or both on a movie, to help with that question, each week we put a movie on trial, discuss the facts, pass judgment, and let you know our verdict. Today we're reviewing Scream. It was released January 14th, 2022. It was written by James Vanderbilt and Guy Busick. It was directed by Matt Bettinelli-Olpin and Tyler Gillette. It stars Melissa Barrera, Jack Quaid, Mikey Madison, Jenna Ortega, Mason Gooding, Jasmine Savoy Brown, David Arquette, Courtney Cox, and Nev Campbell. 25 years after the original series of murders in Woodsboro, a new Ghostface emerges, and Sidney Prescott must return to uncover the truth. If you haven't seen this movie and you want to avoid spoilers, go check out our spoiler-free review on YouTube to see if you should even watch this movie. There's a link in our show notes down below. Or if you're going to see it, go ahead and pause the podcast now, go watch it, come back, pick up where you left off. If you're okay with spoilers, hang out because we're going to spoil the shit out of this thing. All right, boys, let's talk Scream.
Let's not.
Yeah. So I'll give the public, for those that haven't watched my spoiler-free review, I have to give the public apology here as well. And that is, I dragged Javier to this under the guise of it being a comedy horror, you know, with some slasher murder. And Javier likes some good violence, but he loves good comedy.
Sure.
And normally that's what the other 4 Screams have been, is a little tension with the, you know, there was some purposeful jump scares that you'd see coming and a little bit of violence, but usually it was like campy violence where, you know, you'd see a knife go into someone, but you didn't actually see it. You just saw some blood pouring down and, you know, it almost even looked like fake blood. And so you're like, oh, okay, it's funny because it was making fun of the horror genre and all the tropes. And this wasn't that. So all the work I've put in to get Javier to watch horror with me, it was ruined. The trust is gone. Because this movie was, well, I just say it is very intense. Yeah. It's very violent. A lot of jump scares. I was waiting for
it to get funny.
Yeah.
Like, and I guess there were some jokes in there. There were a couple ones that I thought were funny or I chuckled at nervously. And some other ones that JJ said you kind of have to watch the other ones to like really appreciate. So I'm like waiting for this movie to get funny at some point and like stop being as horrible and horrifying as it was. And boy, it does not get any better.
No.
There's that one part where the kid is at home and he's like opening doors at that camera angle where you're like, someone's behind this door, and he closes it, no one's there. And this happens like 6 times. And I'm like, I am this close to leaving. If he doesn't get murdered right now, like the only time in the movie where I'm like, just get it over with. Just kill this kid and let's move on. And that one was bad because he stabbed him like in the freaking neck.
Yeah. That one was a slow burn kill there.
Oh, dude, I looked away for like 3 seconds. I was like, okay, we're probably good. I look back and it's still like in his neck. I'm like, oh, what's happening?
Oh, man. I will say that part, I didn't laugh at you too much during this movie because I really did feel like a dick because it was really rough. But I will say that moment, I guess those like 5 moments, I was dying because I knew there were at least a handful coming because there is every Scream movie. I benefit from having watched all the Scream movies previous where you guys neither one have. And every Scream movie has at least one of those scenes where it just keeps dragging shit out. And there'll be like 2 or 3 fake out jump scares that aren't actually the killer. And then like 2 or 3 setups that feel like there's about to be a jump scare and then there's not. So when this one started, I was like, oh, here's that moment. And Javier would relax, tense up, relax, tense up. And like the last 2 or 3, I hear him muttering under his breath, God damn it, just fucking, this is bullshit. I hate this so much. Like it was just.
At one point, it was before this, but at one point, I just turned to JJ and I'm just like, fuck you, dude.
Yeah.
Like,
Very
fuck
true.
you, your mom, your dad, your whole family, you, your dog, not your dogs.
Yeah.
Your dogs are
I
cool.
was just saying, my dogs love you.
Made me so mad, dude.
Oh, dude, I know. It was so bad. Funny as hell, though. In that moment. The rest of the time I did, I was like, oh, God damn it. Every time you'd squirm, I'd be like, son of a bitch, I'm never going to get him to watch anything horror with me again. There's no amount of kebabs that are going to get past the screen experience.
I will say, for the most part, they did keep to you knew exactly when something was going to happen.
Yeah.
Right? Like, based on the camera angle and like the music and the fact that she's alone in a hospital by herself and it's dark. I'm like, okay, yeah, she's definitely getting murdered.
Yeah.
So at least I could like prepare myself in my little cocoon of my knees and my hoodie.
You didn't have your hoodie, though.
Oh, I didn't have my hoodie.
Yeah, you had a jacket. You kept lifting the lapel of your jacket and trying to cover your face with it. And I look over a couple of times, and you should have seen it. Like, he's got his hands completely covering his face, and all you can see is like a little hole in his fingers that he's peeking out through.
At one point, I'm doing that, right? And my eyes are closed, and I open my eyes, and the little triangle hole that I made with my hands, the only part that I could see is the Scream Mask dude running across the lawn. And dude, I'm like, that's going to haunt my nightmares. Just because he doesn't walk cool or normal. He freaking runs like a maniac.
Yeah, with his face first, like.
Yeah,
it's really funny. Yeah. Well, anyway. I will say that, like, from the perspective of a movie, like, if you haven't seen any of the other Screams, and this is something where I'll rely on you two, like, I was watching it going, like you said, Javier, it's not funny, or it's okay, there's funny parts, but it's not as funny if you haven't seen it. A lot of the jokes, probably 90%, I'd say, of the jokes in this Scream movie are tied directly to the original Scream. And then there's like some references to the other 3, but mostly the original Scream is where most of the funny parts come from. And that's disappointing because the others, especially the first one, had to make up its own comedy. Like, it had Randy, the 2 twins, their uncle that they kept talking about that was killed in one of the movies. I think it was the second one he dies in. But Randy is like the funniest dude in the first one, and he's like huge comedic relief. You have Matthew Lillard, who's in the first one, and he's huge comic relief. So there's some funny parts in there. This one, all the jokes were tie-ins to the original, which I think is cool, but it also misses a little bit for like new fans. Like, people coming to see it that haven't seen the originals, it's not going to be
part of the inside joke.
Yeah, you're not. I had to explain a couple of them to Javier and Ian in the middle of the movie.
Is Courtney Cox in the other ones?
Yeah, her and Nev Campbell and David Arquette are in every one of the other ones.
Man, her acting career really went downhill.
Yeah. I mean, Courtney Cox never really had much of outside of Friends. That's what most people with Friends don't realize is most of the actors in Friends, with the exception of
Jennifer
Aniston.
And what's his face who plays Ross? He did some other stuff.
But nothing major. Like, tell me a major movie. There were a couple.
He's the giraffe in Madagascar.
Sure. Okay. He's a voice in a cartoon.
That's a blockbuster, you know?
The guy that played Chandler Bing did more shit than that. Like, it's one of those things where, like, they all did things and they had but Jennifer Aniston's the only one that ever took off. Like, Courtney Cox had Scream after Friends, and that was about it that I can think of.
That's how like every sitcom group is, though, right? How I Met Your Mother, Neil Patrick Harris is the only one that's done shit after that.
And that's only because he did things before that.
And that's because you're right. Exactly. He was the only famous person to begin with. That movie.
I guess Jason Segel did. Like, Jason Segel, he's got those independent comedies that he did that did pretty well.
Which one's Jason Segel?
He's the guy that's married to the redhead. Yeah, Marshall.
The tall guy. Yeah.
He did some comedy films like Forgetting Sarah Marshall, and he's got some out there that he was in. Yeah. But again, I mean, even David Arquette, like you see him and you're like, oh, it's David Arquette. But when was the last time I saw him? Oh, probably like Scream 4. But they got some big young actors in this one. Like the new cast was like Jack Quaid's pretty big now because of The Boys.
Oh, yeah.
The Dylan Minnette kid's pretty big.
That's
because
the only
of
one I think I recognized.
Oh, really? Well, Dylan Minnette was he's the guy that got his neck, that hole in his neck that you're talking about, Javier. He was in 13 Reasons Why on Netflix. That was really big. And then he
Never saw that.
He was in...
Yeah, I didn't watch that.
He was one of the kids in Prisoners with Hugh Jackman, and I can't remember the other guy's name that was in that one. But he's done some movies and some shows that the younger generation knows. He was in Goosebumps movies, a lot of kiddie.
The one with Jack Black?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
That was a terrible movie.
It was a terrible movie. But he was in it. So, I mean, he's done some things that are the bigger stuff. But there was some up and coming. Like, Melissa Barrera was in The Heights. The main girl.
Speaking of terrible movies.
Oh,
She was Vanessa in The Heights.
you're right.
Yep.
Yes, we have seen that one.
Yeah. So we did review that one.
It's kind of sad, but a measure of like happiness, I don't know what to call it, success, is now when somebody says, hey, have you seen this movie? And somebody else goes, that's a terrible movie. And I can say, I haven't seen that. That makes me feel good inside because I feel like I have to watch a lot of terrible movies now.
We have.
That there's a terrible movie out there that you haven't seen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We missed one.
I like to think that She Dies Tomorrow isn't the worst movie out there. I just haven't seen the worst movie out there.
No.
Kind of makes me actually a little scared now that I think about it.
Yeah. We tried to catch it with the Tender Bar. That one was pretty rough.
Cry Macho. I'd watch The Tender Bar
yeah,
over
Cry
Cry
Macho
Macho
was rough.
anytime.
I started watching Tender Bar actually because I was going to try to make it to the recording.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got partway through it and I was like, you know what? They think I'm not going to make it to this. So,
Oh, baby, that was a hard one. But you guys will find that out next week. Yeah, so back to Scream. I will say I do like that they stepped up the violence. If you can get past Javier, the jump scare piece of it, the violence was on point. Like the gore and the makeup, because a lot of it looked pretty practical. I liked that. Like the knife through the neck thing. Like, that was a prosthetic that went through and it looked great. To the point that Javier was cringing.
You know what I saw that really didn't line up?
What's that?
Is how tall Amber is when she's wearing the Ghostface costume.
Yeah.
Because that girl had to have had stilts to even do half the gory things that the murderer did.
Yeah.
yeah, she killed the dude in the hospital, right? The sheriff.
Yeah,
The sheriff.
And she came up to like his chest in height, but somehow like split him up like his entire body.
Yeah.
Abdomen and all that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it wasn't Jack Quaid's character, the other killer, because he was on the elevator that he sent down.
Yeah.
So it had to have been her. And then she admits at the end that I killed your husband, Dewey. But I think that's part of the running gag. And again, this is one of those things that I think unless you've seen the other Screams, so the other Scream movies, except for the first one, all had a really short person as one of the killers. And yet they were always just as tall, no matter which version you were looking at. Like in the second movie, the killer was a guy that was in one of their film classes in college, at the college that they were at. And then the second killer was Billy Loomis's mom, who was like this 50-year-old, really short woman. But Emma Roberts was one of the killers. And then there was another guy that was a killer. And they were both, like, she's really short. So, like, that's been the case in every Scream movie except for two of them, where one of the killers, you're like, that doesn't make sense. She's like 5 nothing. And this killer stands above everyone in the movie. So
Not just
now that I know the
height
killers, I
difference.
feel more prepared to survive a Scream movie.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's let's see, who would it be in our friend group? Who would be the killer? Definitely Mattson and his fiance.
There you go.
100%. Yeah.
I was talking about how the guy makes her do trivia at the start of the movie, but yeah, that you can answer that question too, Javier. That works.
Oh,
Yeah.
whoops. Well, he
Love
fingers
Mattson.
crossed he's not listening because I might die.
Oh, shit.
The other thing about her, like
50-50?
not being tall enough, is like she's also like $120 soaking wet. Like this chick is
Well, at most, yeah, she's teeny little thing.
size wise.
Yeah.
Like overpowering her would be the easiest thing to do for a full grown adult male. So the fact that she like wrestled this dude, stabbed him, and then stabbed him in the back, and then just raked him up and down. I need her workout regimen.
Gunshots.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh, which by the way, yeah, she'd have like broken ribs.
Yeah. Well, and I told you guys this after the movie. That's another one of those things that's very Scream-esque is the killers always get their ass kicked throughout the movie, but you'd never know. Like they get beat up constantly, but like there's no bruises, there's no telltale signs of like seriously, in the first movie, there's a point where in mimicking one of the things that happens in this one, they send this girl named Tatum out to the garage of the same house that we were in this movie to get more beer. And so she's loading up with like a handful of beer bottles. Like she's probably got a dozen beer bottles in her arms, getting ready to come back in. And the killer comes into the garage with her and she starts firing off full beer bottles and hitting this dude, like with the beer bottles in the face, in the body, like. And then you see the killers less than 20 minutes later in this house unmasked and no bruises whatsoever. Like it's like their Ghostface outfit is like made of titanium or something. It's the funniest shit.
I thought it was funny in this movie that the slightest thing would knock the Scream person just over tables, into like medical equipment, just constantly falling over.
Yeah. Well, and they're always beating them up with like the weirdest shit. Like they get beat up with phones or, like you said, the medical equipment, stuff like that. So yeah, it's just a Screamism, I guess.
Screamism,
for lack of a better way to look at it. Yeah, that and the two
one
killers.
That made me laugh was the murder in like broad daylight on the lady's front porch.
Oh yeah, of the sheriff.
That's pretty ballsy as a murderer to like full daylight front yard.
Oh, for real.
That one got Javier so bad because he thought she was running to save the kid and did not see that dude coming. Like,
no, I did not.
I didn't see that one coming either.
Yeah, when she runs up the porch, like Javier came out. That was the only one you actually made an audible scream on, was that one. It got you good.
Oh, was that the only one?
Yeah, that was the only one. The rest you kind of huddled in your little
there was that
pocket.
For calling all the cops in this town to her house, they have a terrible response time.
Terrible.
Yeah.
Because we had enough to watch like 6 doors get opened and closed before he stabbed this guy in the neck slowly.
Dude, no, not only that, she made it back to her house, got murdered.
Oh, yeah.
Dude finished his shower, came down, like made himself a bowl of cereal, and then got murdered.
Yeah.
Before the cops got there.
Yep.
Typical.
Yeah, it's pretty rough.
Typical cops, dude.
I wanted to like feed that one to Javier and see if I could get that out of him.
Right? The one time you need them, where are they? Getting murdered on their own doorstep. That's where.
I will say that the one thing that I loved about Javier too, though, was like this was like Neve Campbell's character, Sidney Prescott in this movie, is like Javier's dream person in a movie like this, because she just was shooting everything. Like she's shooting in closets, doesn't give a shit. She's just saying, I'm shooting everything. And if you don't fucking come out, you're going to get shot.
Thank you. I appreciated that so much. That is how I would handle this situation. Just walk upstairs, boom, shoot through the door. No one died? All right, next door. Yeah, until she shoots someone and she opens it. She's like, I told you to come out. And he's like, you're a gun-wielding maniac. Fair point.
Which she does, right? She shoots Jack Quaid's character, right? And that
she's still got the killer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he comes before she knew
which
it was
only reinforces the idea that that is the correct way to handle this situation.
Yeah.
If anything, she should have shot twice in the doors.
2 per door. As long as she reloaded right out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I feel like that's optional.
Yeah. There were some interesting elements to this thing that I found were different. So like this whole tie-in to Billy Loomis, who was one of the original killers. I get it. Like the main girl was his daughter from this high school weird affair. Like I feel like that was glazed over a little more than it should have been, other than like using Billy, the image of Billy in these like daydreams or these hallucinations that she was having as like scare points and like creepiness because he's like dead Billy in these images. I felt like they could have really made that a little bit more of an interesting story. I thought that was pretty cool. But I wanted, instead of Billy Loomis's, I would have much rather it been Stu Macher's. So like the other killer in the original was, part of it is I don't like Skeet Ulrich, who's the actor for Billy Loomis. Like, not my favorite actor. Like, he's like the poor man's Johnny Depp when Johnny Depp was cool. But who I do just love is Matthew Lillard. Like, that dude is entertaining as shit. And that's the movie. Scream was the movie that put him really into the mainstream, able to play Shaggy in the Scooby-Doo movies and like everything that he's done. This one launched him in it. It would have been more entertaining to me if he was the one that was this girl's dad or whatever, or they tied it into him, because he was the crazier of the two. Billy, the whole thing with the first movie is Billy's mom was sleeping with Sidney's dad, which in his mind made his dad leave. So he was raised without his dad. So he was getting back at Sidney for this whole thing, right? Stu was like, I'm doing it because the movies. Like, that's my thing. Like, I'm killing everybody because I like horror movies and they taught me how to get away with it. Like, to me, that was more of an entertaining reason, especially at the time, because it's the time of Scream. Like, that was the thing, is the movies made you do it, right? Somebody would do some shitty stuff and somebody would say, well, it must be the movies or the video games. And so they were really leaning into that in that first movie. So I just thought, I mean, in 96, when the first one came out, that was everybody blame the movies, blame the magazines, blame the video games.
Even though there's literally no evidence to support that. In fact, the evidence supports the opposite.
Yeah.
That humans have just been pieces of shit for as long as we've been around. And some are just worse than others.
Yep. Now, the other piece that I loved was the tie-in to Randy, like these twins with his niece and nephew. That shit was great. Like, one of the most meta moments in this movie was always in the first one, their Uncle Randy, who was like the guy that set the rules. He gets mad in this house and at this party, and he starts, so there's rules to surviving a horror movie. He's like, you can't have sex, never have sex. And everyone in the movie is like, boo, like they get all pissed, right? Because he's like, fine, go have sex, but just know that you're dead if you have sex. And then he's going through all these rules, right? And then he's like, only the virgins survive the movie. And then he's like, whatever you do, don't ever say, I'll be right back. And then like one of the killers goes, I'm going to go get some popcorn. You want any? He's like, no, I'll be right back. And then they're all like, oh. So he's sitting on this couch watching Halloween, the movie Halloween, the original with Jamie Lee Curtis. He ends up by himself and he's sitting there staring at this movie. Michael Myers is behind her. He's like screaming at Jamie, go, Jamie, behind you, Jamie. The actor's name that played Randy was Jamie, and behind him is a Ghostface sneaking up. So he's sitting on the couch telling Jamie, behind you. And the whole time he should be going, Jamie, behind you. So this meta moment. So to have his niece, who's the movie guru, now sitting on the couch watching stab of her uncle, the reenactment of her uncle in that very scene, like laughing at it while it's happening again. To me, as a Scream fan, like that was just like the greatest moment. Like I was laughing my ass off. I didn't care how scared Javier was in that moment. Like I was like, this is the greatest thing ever. Watching this like meta moment. Loved it. And there were tons of those in it.
I think the best part of this movie was when the sheriff right out of the gate is like, your boyfriend's the murderer. And then we just move past that. Like, that's ridiculous. Turns out he is the murderer. Yeah. The kid's like, oh man, he got it right out of the gate.
Yeah, he should have listened to him.
You should have listened to him. What are you, stupid?
He's like, Dewey almost fucked this whole thing up for me. Like,
that was pretty good.
That was pretty good.
I think my favorite line, though, was when the actual murderer tells Dewey he's the murderer. And Dewey's like, well, maybe you're the murderer because that cut deep.
I tell you, the worst part about this movie was Courtney Cox.
The worst part?
Yeah, I can't stand her. Like, I just don't.
Probably doesn't help that she can't act.
No, it was just pointless having her in this movie, I feel like. Like, at least, like, Neve Campbell can act. even though she wasn't in the movie as much as I thought she would be. But like, yeah, it was rough.
Not only that, is her character's like super dumb in this movie. She like shows up, gets shot, and then she's just like kind of useless for like the whole movie.
True. That's true. What was there was another one that the Sydney gets a hold of the phone or whatever, and the killer's like, she's just like ripping him a new one because he's talking to her. And she says something about, you might be the worst of all the killers that have redone this. He goes, I mean, Christ, the same house or something like that. And then the killer says something about, you forgot the first rule of surviving a stab movie. Never answer the, and she's like, fuck you, I'm bored, and hangs up the phone on him. And that's when she walks in and just starts shooting everybody.
Like before she hangs up, you hear him go like, wait, no.
Yeah. It's like, wait. that shit. There's some good one-liners.
Though if I went through 5, 6, however many of these movies this chick has gone through, I also would stay in shape. Like you first see her in the movie running, right? So she has guns and has stayed in shape. I'm like 100%. That's what I would do. I would just assume everyone's a serial killer and I would be armed and jacked for the rest of my life.
That is fair. And she does get
Shoot
progressively...
doors in creepy houses.
Well, yeah, that's true. And then anytime there might be a killer or two in the house, just shoot first, ask questions later.
Yeah. Also, I would never go back to that town.
No.
Especially not during like an active murder spree.
Yeah.
Nah.
I'm good. I'm staying. Well, and that's like, I thought she wasn't at first. Like, I was like, oh, that's going to be a neat twist because she is on the phone with Dewey. He's like, don't come back. She goes, I'm not fucking going anywhere near that town. Are you shitting me? And then I thought, okay, maybe that's the end of what, but I knew that there were scenes from the trailer that we hadn't seen yet. So I was like, son of a bitch, how funny would that be if she just didn't show back up?
Yeah. I would not have blamed her.
Nope, not even a little bit. Yeah, I did love too, and this would be my last point that we could rate it if you guys want, but that's the one thing about Scream movies is they've always been very derivative of horror movies in general in the genre, especially the slasher genre. So like, it was great because the opening scene, this movie mimicked the original opening scene. So the original opening scene had Drew Barrymore was the first girl. She got this blonde wig and she's popping popcorn. And so they have this whole conversation about Jason being the killer of the first Friday the 13th movie. That was the first question. And he's like, no, that's wrong. It was Jason's mom. And so then he kills her boyfriend. And that's when she realizes, oh shit, this is real, right? So in the fourth movie, every movie is opened with some version of that, right? This phone call, you want to play a game, you like scary movies, and then somebody dies. Well, in the fourth movie, the one before this one, they start with that and you think you're into the movie, and then this person gets killed. And then it does it like 7 times over to show that they've made now like 8 stab movies within the universe of Scream. And each one has more and more famous actresses as the first people killed or as like the original killer or whatever. So like each movie's gotten progressively different pieces that it's making fun of. And I love that this one's the requel. Like that's the term that they coin in this, where it's not quite a sequel, but it's not quite a reboot either. Like you have to have new elements.
They mentioned Ghostbusters.
Yeah, they mentioned, yeah. And then you talk about, but that's the funniest part is it's a sequel because it has all the old characters. You bring back the familiar characters, but it's almost a reboot of the original, which this one was pretty close. You got the same house. You got boyfriend's the killer along with the crazy friend of everybody else involved. So you got this tie-up thing. I really enjoyed, and it's happening all the time, like Ghostbusters, where they're doing this requel thing. So I love the commentary and the satire on the movie industry, even as it expands beyond horror where it started. So that was one of my favorite enjoyable parts for me too, is I love the commentary. Cool. Should we rate it? I know you guys got nothing to say about this movie. No final
points. About your enjoyable part, Javier.
I hated this movie. It was the worst thing that's ever happened to me. And I don't have any concrete reasons other than it was a horrible experience. So, can I go first?
Sure.
It was terrible. Don't watch it. It sucked ass. I would rather lick a just molten spoon than have to watch this movie again.
Fair enough.
I'd rather be chased by a serial killer.
A real one.
A real one. I'd rather watch a feature-length film that only Courtney Cox was in, and she played all the characters like Medea. To watch this again.
Oh my God. I'm sorry.
That.
I'm going to give this, what's the lowest we can give? Is it a 0?
Yeah.
I'm not going to give it a 0 because there was at least 2 parts that I laughed. I'm going to give this a 1.
I can get
it was
that.
terrible. I'm never watching this again. I'm never watching any Scream movie again. I'm never watching movies again. Just kidding. But definitely not horror movies. I'm back to square one with those. That's for sure.
I know. It's so terrible. Well, and the worst part, there's so many bad parts about this movie having ruined your trust of me. But like, my goal really was to get you to watch this one and then have a good time laughing at it because I thought that it would be the same level of humor as the others. And again, if you've seen the Screams, it is, but without it, it's not at all. And so I'm like, son of a bitch, because I was going to immediately try to get you to come watch the first one with me because I was like, you'll think it's hilarious as fuck. And now I'm not even going to ask because I was like, I'm done. Like, there's no fucking way.
No, go ahead and ask.
No, I'm not going to ask. No, because I know the answer. It's go fuck yourself, and that's okay. I understand why, and I fully accept that without having to hear you tell me, Javier.
Oh, okay, great, cool.
All right, Ian, go ahead.
Anyway. Yeah, like I said in the spoiler-free, I didn't know what to expect, but my guesstimation as far as what this movie would contains that. I got what I was thinking I would see. There are a couple of like joke moments, few one-liners that were pretty good. A lot of up-close and personal, very graphic, show-it-all violence that was definitely up to par. Yeah, we'll do 1.5. I mean, I don't like horror movies. They're not my thing. I don't have the Javier relationship with horror movies, but I mean, yeah, if that's your thing, maybe you'll like it more, but not here.
Yeah, that's true. Like the whole movie, I would look over at you and Ian's just stoic Ian watching this movie. I think it was a couple of moments where I heard you giggle, but I was surprised you weren't laughing more at Javier, but he was surprisingly quiet. He was just curling up real tight in the chair. Like,
Yeah, I didn't realize Javier was going through what he was going through. I could have been a support. And he sat on the other side of him.
Yeah, I was going to say, he should have been stuck between the two of us because he was going through it. Boy, I tell you what, it was rough.
I try not to like cover my eyes in horror movies that JJ's like, it's not that bad. And I tried for like the first probably 25, 30 minutes of this. And I was like, I can't.
Yeah, I will say that I've always been impressed with Javier because no matter how scared he is, like even when he covers his face, he leaves enough to see something. Like it's not like one of these people that just completely
like ghost face running at you.
Yeah, well, yeah. Sometimes it's the worst thing possible you can see, but I will give him. I was impressed. Every time I look over and he's covering his face, there's still a view that he has of the movie somewhere.
I ain't no bitch.
I ain't no bitch, but can you guys ride home with me tonight?
Also, I need all the lights on.
Yeah, hey, can you walk me to my truck real quick? Like,
can you make sure there's no one in the back seat?
Yeah, that was he left my house after the Haunting of Hill House. He's got this horse of a dog with him, and he's like, hey, dude, like, just stand at the door while I get to my car.
A lot can happen.
Yeah.
Okay. From your door to your car. We learned that in this movie. Sometimes you get murdered on your doorstep.
It's true. All right. I'm going to come in with my biased rating, and that is that, look, I'm a Scream fan, and this movie is the best of the last probably 3. Scream 1 was amazing. I will never not be a Scream 1 fan because it changed the horror genre. It gave some comedy to it. It made fun of itself. Still had some really cool aspects that horror has, the intensity, the murder. But it had a mystery, too. Like, you didn't know there were 2 killers at the time. That was the first time you were like, oh, shit, there's 2 killers working together. That's why it didn't make sense for anyone on the screen to be the killer. So it was really interesting. This one was up there. I mean, obviously, there's the things that you can't get away from. You knew there were going to be 2 killers. It was pretty obvious that the boyfriend, though, I was like, they wouldn't do that right out the gate, right? But they did, which was funny to me. So I love that they leaned into what made Scream good in the first one. It was fun to bring back the characters. The violence was out of control, which was a nice step up for this movie. I know Javier doesn't agree, but for those of us that have watched the last 4 Scream movies, it was good because that was a ramp up. They took it to the next level. And while I feel bad about having Javier sit through this movie, it added it for me. Like, it made the Scream franchise better to take it that notch up and to make it more intense and more violent. So I enjoyed that part. Still not a perfect movie. There was definitely a Courtney Cox in the movie. So, I mean, it does bring it down a notch just right there. But I'm going to give it a 3.5 because I had a lot of fun. And I thought for a horror movie, it was entertaining. There was some decent acting. There was some bad acting. But overall, I was very entertained. So there's my biased rating. Yeah, a 1, a 1.5, and a 3.5. So go check it out if you're feeling like you like a scary movie or if you're a big Scream fan. I think you'll enjoy it. Next week, we will be reviewing The Tender Bar. That'll come out on the 7th of January. So enjoy that one or don't.
February?
Yeah, February. Sorry. 7th of February. Jesus, January is over. Yeah, 7th of February.
Fast.
Yeah, it's going quick. So yeah, check us out. Also go check out our social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all at What's Our Verdict. You can communicate with us there. Let us know what you thought of the movie. We want to hear. Also,
emphasis on the dick.
Well, I mean, I was working on my dictation there, Ian. Like
okay.
Yeah.
It's coming through a lot clearer now.
Yeah. My enunciation was a problem there. I just was like, a verdict. So yeah, check it out. Also, go check out our website, whatsourverdict.com, where you can leave us a comment on all of our episodes and listen to any others. Leave us a review. We'd love that. Apple Podcast, Podchaser, or Spotify. You can leave us reviews. We'd love a 5-star. Again, that always helps us grow the podcast. As always, we appreciate you tuning in. We'll catch you on the next one.
Bye-bye now.
Cinemagic out.